What exactly is happening? What deal have you made with the devil? What fountain of youth are you drinking from? What is happening in the world of Chris Jericho that you look as good as you do, you're moving as good as you do, you're as busy as ever? How the fuck? Did you ever think that you would be going at the pace that you're going at right now?
I don't know, because I like, it's weird for me. Like, how old are you, Chris? I'm like 52. Like 52. Like what? So I don't ever think that way. I've never once in my life, nor will I ever say, "Oh man, I'm getting old," or "I'm too old for this." Like never. Once you start thinking that,
Mm-hmm.
then like I would venture to say that Mick Jagger has never once in his life went, "Oh, I'm too old for that."
Yeah.
Like maybe I'm
Yeah.
over it now, or I don't, I have no interest in going to like a Vegas club anymore. Like I just don't like that type of vibe. But I would never go because, oh, I feel too old. Like, I never felt that way. Another big thing too is December of last year I had a pulmonary embolism, which are blood clots in your lungs, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
were in London on tour with Fozzy. We were in England, so I was basically stuck there for like 10 days because you can't fly when you have blood clots and stuff. And so after that, like I had like that was kind of a big kind of a wake up call.
Yeah.
So I lost 30 pounds and I got, everything in order as far as heart, lungs, all the stuff you have to do. And I have a clean bill of health at this point. And so I took that to heart, you know what I mean? So, and people said, "Well, you just stop drinking?" Like, no, I still drink. I just in moderation, and
Yeah.
just watch what I'm eating and just all of that sort of thing. So I think that was a real, like, if you look at me like a year and a half ago to now, I look like a different guy because I was 30 pounds heavier. I didn't
Right.
notice it, you know, but during the lockdown, I mean, fuck, man, all we used to do is just drink and eat and not do anything. You don't even
I know.
realize it. It's like, oh, I still got abs. Oh, sure, you got these abs, but then you got flab everywhere else. And you just don't realize that. So that was a really kind of it was a good wake up call to where, you could die. People die from, from pulmonary embolisms.
How
So
scary to be that far away from home and have something of that magnitude happen. Like that's
yeah.
scary as all hell. Your family must have freaked.
Yeah, it was really scary. And the worst part was this was still kind of at the end of COVID.
Right.
So there was still, testing for this and like, and my oxygen level was so low because of the clots that they're like, if it goes any lower, you have to go on the ventilator. And of course, that was
Fuck.
the number one thing that all of us were
Yeah.
like, no, no fucking ventilator. And the
Yeah.
closest that I got was they had to put I can't remember, a cannula at the oxygen here,
Okay.
because the oxygen has to come up. That's something that you learn during COVID. One of the things why people had to go on ventilators is your oxygen percentage in your blood should be about 98, 99. It should be 100, but 98, 99 is fine. I was down at around 92. If you get lower than 90, right to the ventilator. And to me, that was like you're
Holy
thinking death
shit.
sentence, right? So
Yeah.
I never put on the gown that they give you, and I refused to get in a wheelchair for any tests that I had to do because I was like, no, that's one step closer to never getting out.
No, that's actually like probably a good mindset. Just like you were fighting it from the get-go. I am
Yeah.
not doing any like even from like the gown. Yeah.
Like I know
Hell
that
no.
I know that I have clots. Like we got it. Give me the freaking the Eliquis, which is called, but and the first one they give you is a giant needle about this big, and they stick it right in your thigh and just like whack. It's like Pulp Fiction when he gives Uma Thurman the adrenaline.
Yes.
I was like, I need the Eliquis. They said I need blood thinners. They did all the tests. Okay, now you get your Eliquis. I'm like, thank. Oh no, whack! Ah, because it need to get it in there right away. And thankfully the blood thinners worked. So I responded really well because I'm a fairly healthy guy. And there's no reason to get blood clots. It's not like, oh, were you eating bad or were
Right.
you whatever. They were just there, right?
How
That
did you
actually.
know? Like what kind of tipped you off to knowing
So
that
we
that you needed to get to the hospital?
we were on tour with Fozzy, and the first couple gigs were fine, and then the fourth or fifth gig, I started losing my breath on stage to where I couldn't catch my breath, and I couldn't sing because I couldn't catch my breath. I've never had that problem, and maybe I'm just worn down, or maybe I'm tired, and then it got to the point where I called a doctor friend of mine in the States, and she said, "You might have blood clots, so when you get back, get it checked out. I didn't make it to when I got back, because the last gig before I found out, I literally felt the whole walls closing in on me to where I was like, I got freaked out. Like, I got to get out of here. I got to run off. I almost ran off the
Oh
stage
my
and ran to the
God.
crowd at the front door. So thankfully, we had a day off in London to do press, and we know, obviously we've been there many times, so we know that rock doctors,
Yeah.
they come to you. And the guy came to me at the hotel that we were at, the London Hard Rock, and he took some blood tests, and he said, okay, we're going to analyze these, and in about 3 hours, I want you to go for a heart scan. Because I was like, I can't do this. I can't play another show until we find this out. And within that 3 hours, they called me and said, you got blood clots. You got to go right to the hospital.
Holy shit.
And that last walk down the elevator, that's why the London Hard Rock is like one of my all-time favorite places, because that's where I stayed when I was having this horrible. But that walk across the lobby, I felt like I was climbing the Matterhorn. I could barely walk. And then finally getting to that hospital, it's like, fuck, I'm done. So that's kind of like, I really knew like this is really serious, right? So
wow. Well, shit. I mean, first of all, thank God that you've like overcome that. And again, going back to like, I remember I saw you was in Nashville. Like, I just came with John. I wasn't working for the company yet. And I saw you and I was like, oh my God, look at Chris. Like, you just looked like $1,000,000 but I mean, yes, aesthetically looking good, but being able to like move good and feel good. I mean, shit, it's very impressive to just like watch what you do in the matches that you're having at the level that you're having them. On the mental side of things, how do you keep yourself engaged? Do you ever have moments where you sort of mentally check out a little bit? Like, you've been doing it for so long, and obviously you were the king of reinventing himself. But what is that process like for you in terms of like, is there a lull where you go, I'm getting a little bored. Now what am I going to do? Like, how does that process work for you?
It's funny because so when AEW started, like I was kind of out mentally out of WWE. I didn't really want to be there anymore. And so I went to Japan a couple times. I saw you there, as a matter of fact, when John was starting to go there. And it really kind of reinvigorated my love of wrestling and the creative process, because WWE is amazing, but there's a certain way they do things, as you know, and you fall into the system. Once you get kind of traded from, you know, the Chiefs and go play for the Eagles, there's a different coach and a different system. And that's what Tony Khan's vision was, very much almost like New Japan. So that's why I wanted to go to AEW, because I didn't want to just be in WWE and just be there for the sake of being there. I wanted to try and make a difference in wrestling and change the course of wrestling history, which we did. So that kind of reinvigorated my whole love and fire and passion for wrestling. And now that we're 3.5 years in, I have a lot of responsibilities in AEW, and it's not just in the ring, it's a lot out of the ring, especially.
What are some of the other hats that you're wearing? Because you are very busy doing things outside of being Chris Jericho in the ring.
Well, I think just being Chris Jericho backstage, like I have the most experience out of anybody in the company, with the exception of Dustin Rhodes, but also because I came in as kind of the flagship guy. Like when AEW first started, it was on my back for the first few months. We knew this. How many stars can we make? Let's bring in Mox. But the Cody wasn't as big as he was. No one really knew who Kenny and the Bucks were. Hangman Page, Darby Allin, Jungle Boy. Those are some of the guys I can recall working with right out of the gate. Just like, we have to get more plates spinning here. So backstage, there's a lot of advice given out, a lot of listening, a lot of bartender listening. You know, I've got a problem with this. I got a problem with that. There's a lot of working closely with Tony Khan. You know, a lot of locker room leading, you know, especially over the last 6 months or so, when we kind of had to take the reins back, when there was a lot of bad publicity and a lot of uncertainty in the dressing room. As a matter of fact, your man and Danielson and myself kind of like, we have to really take charge here, because we're going to lose the dressing room. And if you lose the dressing room, you're fucked. So there's a lot of that sort of thing going on. Basically everything, you know. I think it's kind of almost like a real general, you know, one of Tony Khan's, if Tony Khan's probably got a lot of right-hand men, but I think I'm probably one of them. And also too, kind of just helping out the locker room. And I produce probably half the backstage promos that you see. Just trying to help as much as I can.
How have you noticed things have changed in the last 6 months or so? I mean, you talk about, some of the things that did happen and how you guys had to kind of take the reins back. How have you seen things change in the last 6 months for AEW and for yourself?
Well, I think, that's a big question. To start giving that answer, one thing I always point out to a lot of people in the business, in the company, and outside is we're only 3 years old, right?
Yeah.
And I knew it was going to be like this from the moment we started, like the whole concept of EVPs and kind of that whole thing. I knew that it wouldn't really mean anything because it's one boss, it's one vision, and we have to follow that vision. I worked for Vince for 20 years. And one of the reasons why I was able to get as far as I did and become as big as I did, because I understood you have to do what your boss wants. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. It doesn't matter if you think your stuff is better. In our company, there was a lot of that kind of resistance because there was a lot of guys that didn't work in the big corporate system. Right. Doesn't matter what you think. Our boss is the boss, and we have to do our best to help him with that vision, right? So I think there's a lot more cohesiveness from that side of things.
Yeah.
I think the infrastructure is getting bigger. Bringing in pros, yourself included, as far as like, okay, let's bring in somebody who knows more about PR. Let's bring in someone who knows more about, directing the show, someone who knows more about backstage interviews, someone who knows more about booking, about producing backstage interviews, about writing storylines that the boss will like. I just had a meeting this morning about a couple storylines that I'm working on with a few guys. And it's like, and not even for me, for other people.
Yeah.
But I need to pitch them to Tony because I know how he thinks and I know what he wants. So it doesn't matter what this guy wants. It's like, let's take all these ideas and write it to pitch it to where he will either say yes or no. But you have to, you understand this because you've been around a long time. You gotta speak the language of the people that are in charge. So, there's a lot of that sort of stuff too.
How long does it take you to like figure something like that out? Because everybody is very different. I mean, you talked about working for Vince for 20 years to working for Tony Khan to like, you then have to be pretty malleable in those situations to understand, like, how do I convey what I'm trying to do to this person? I mean, how much do you think about that in terms of like what those conversations look like and how those pitches go? Is there like the time of day you've got to pitch, or like when they've eaten a good meal, those kinds of things?
Yeah, well, Vince was like, you had to make sure that he had eaten, because if Vince was hungry, he wouldn't pay attention to what you were saying. All he could think about was his food, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same with Tony. There's timing things. I mean, everyone wants to talk to Tony at TV. It's the worst time. You can't talk to him. I'll talk to Tony for 5 minutes just about what we've got going on tonight, which maybe could lead to something next week and next week. But I know, like, if I really want to talk to him, I have to get on the phone with him. Now, once again, he's got a lot of stuff going on. He's got Fulham soccer, which is a huge money business.
Yep.
He's got the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is a huge money business. And he's got a lot of other things as well. But those are basically, he runs 3 giant companies, right? Along with his dad and other people. But he's really good at delegating responsibility to guys he trusts, but he doesn't trust a lot of people. And that makes perfect sense, right? Sure. So, you just have to kind of try and get him. And the thing with Tony that I learned is that when he's ready to talk, he'll talk your ear off, but you can't force him to talk and I'm the same, like, hey man, can we talk today? It's like, I can't really talk today, or I don't really I got so much stuff to do in this thing. Let's talk tomorrow about that thing. Yeah. And you just have to realize that. So that's another thing about Tony, is that he's really smart and he's super receptive to all ideas, but you have to catch him at the right time, and you just have to kind of figure out when that may or may not be.